Hello and welcome to another video. In this one, I'll be covering the scenario in case the Ukrainians launch their major offensive, their summer-spring offensive in the Luhansk region. So we know from the past few months that the Ukrainian forces have essentially reached a stalemate on the Luhansk front, where the main fighting is occurring by Kreminna and Svatove. So the Russian forces have established proper defensive lines here in the Luhansk region, where they are fighting heavily in the forest areas, especially south of Kreminna, but generally also by in front to Kreminna from Svatove. So this part of the front line is heavily fortified, and the Russian forces also have their most well-equipped and well-trained soldiers on this part of the front line. They both have the BMP Terminators as well as the T-90M tanks. So heavily fortified, heavily equipped and heavily trained soldiers on this part of the front line. However, this could still be a target for a Ukrainian offensive, because if the Ukrainians gather enough forces, then they'll be able to push through it. And if they managed to cut off the supplies of these troops, it would be a heavy blow to the Russian army, as they would lose a lot of their heavy equipment, best trained and best prepared troops of the whole army in Ukraine. So what would a potential offensive in this part of the front line look like? So we have two areas that are important on the front line and two areas that are important in the back line. The two important areas of the front line is Svatove as well as Kreminna, which is here to the west. And then we have Starobilsk in the back line and Severodonetsk as well as Lysychansk in the back line. So these four areas are the main areas of this part of the front line. In the northern parts, there's just a border area. There's no major villages or cities. So essentially, a Ukrainian offensive would look to cut connection between these four areas. So we have the road between Svatove and Kreminna. Then we have the road between Svatove and Starobilsk. Then we have the road between Starobilsk and Severodonetsk and Kreminna. So the Ukrainian forces would look to cut this off. So the best way would be to isolate them one at a time. So their main objective would be to cut Chernobyl area between Kreminna and Svatove, and then a northern flank towards cutting off Svatove from Starobilsk. If they manage to capture or cut off Svatove, then they can focus their forces in this direction, as they have been cut off from supplies. And then if they manage to capture Svatove, that allows them to move on to the next target, either cutting off Starobilsk from Severodonetsk or cutting off Kreminna from Severodonetsk, allowing them to cut off the front line, or cut off Starobilsk, which would isolate both Severodonetsk and Kreminna from the front line, depending on how the Svatove battle goes. So essentially, the main target of a potential Luhansk offensive from the Ukrainian side would be Svatove. In this scenario, the Ukrainians would have to build up their troops here on the front line, as there is the Oskil River to the back. Moving large amounts of forces across the Oskil River would be difficult. There's also the forest lines to the south. So they would most likely have to do this over a long period of time, and they would have to fight their forces in this period so the Russians don't recognize a troop buildup by Ukrainian forces. However, if they do manage to build up their forces and launch a surprise attack against the Russian forces, then Svatove would definitely be the target of such an offensive. Severodonetsk and Lysychansk would not be a target. It would be mainly just to cut off Kreminna from the rest of the supply lines and the Russian forces. There's also the Severodonetsk River here to the south, which means that cutting off Svatove and this road here between Starobilsk and Kreminna, that would be completely isolating Kreminna from the rest of the Russian forces. So that is this video. Thank you all for watching and have a great day.